welcome one and all to yet another deep probing analysis of a Kings of War tournament. This time it is another 4-foot snake thing, also known as the 4-foot snake GT2. The first one was last year, and as far as I'm aware, it is the only major tournament in the UK to be soft inclusive, and by that I mean soft scores are counted as part of your overall score and not just separate awards. So painting and hobby counts towards your battle scores, and also sportsmanship. So you could potentially only do maybe mediocre at actually playing the games, but if your army is the most incredible thing anyone's ever seen and you just give out free cash to all your opponents, then you could potentially find yourself with a lofty position at the end of the tournament. So this was a 2-day event and 5 games, and there was a slightly longer time limit than usual. There was 1 hour, and this was partly to account for the fact that the players would also place the terrain on the table before the game in a series of predetermined locations. You could choose which terrain piece went on which one alternately, so every single battlefield was different each time. And what you're looking at here in this first image is actually my living legend character that I created. That's another unique feature of the 4-foot snake GT. For anyone not aware, and I would imagine that most people wouldn't be aware, 4-foot snake is actually a podcast, allegedly. I don't think they've done an episode in about a year at least, and maybe they only did about 3 to begin with. So I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know they're a podcast. But each of the 4 hosts, if you can even call them that anymore, has a living legend character named after them, and I went with Colossal Nick because I felt his stat line, not only did it just match my army better, which I'll go through the reasons why in a second, but also he was put down as a halfling giant. So since I'll be playing Rordia, or Undead Rordia, as you may know by now if you've seen the last couple of battle reports, then I thought that was very suitable. And if you were watching my battle reports, of course, over the weekend, you would have seen the warm-up games I had for this. So we've got a couple of people in the chat already. We've got Dave and John in there. So hello to you. Feel free to drop any comments in there as we go. So first of all, we're going to have a look at my living legend here. So he was described as being a height 2 giant, essentially. And I thought, halflings would probably consider a dwarf to be pretty much a giant. And to represent his extra height, he would go on a couple of barrels. So I thought that was pretty cool. But then he also has a wind blast ability. And I thought, what better to represent wind blast than perhaps a trumpet player who is using wind as a weapon, as a projectile, if you will. So I thought, maybe he should have his own little band as well. Maybe I'll finally have a purpose, something to use my Ronnie the Bard miniature for after all these years. So that's what we ended up with. And you can see that a very crude attempt at the Yorkshire flag was made onto the trumpet there, because Nick himself is from Yorkshire. So I did pick one of the most difficult living legend categories because there was a really incredibly, there was a sculpted cloak and a hat on the one that actually won the award for the best Nick model. And hello to Matt there in the chat as well. So of course, very vibrant colour scheme, and you can't go wrong with a bit of exposed cheek, can you? And look at that cheeky little face as well. Not just cheek as in the buttock department, but also he's just a bit of a cheeky chap as well, isn't he? Look at that grin. And yes, hopefully this video doesn't get flagged for nudity or something. And I also decided, because this is the only tournament of the year, that maybe the only one I'm going to be attending, I'm not sure if there are others, the only one I'll be attending that actually factors in soft scores, including display boards, I thought, why don't I have a go at one of those as well? So a few days before the event, I got all the pieces together, started assembling it. I had a bit of trouble getting the right colour of the earth. I was thinking, what could I do to make it match the bases? Because the bases are really just brown with white dry brushed on for the main mud colour, and that would look terrible over such a large surface as a display board. So I went for something a little bit darker, and I think it matches the theme nicely. Skeleton Flowers just popped in the chat, and apparently he joined the video just as we were looking at a well-sculpted pair of butt cheeks. So, great timing there. So, on the display board, I thought it was a cool idea. I've seen other people doing them. There was a couple of really nice ones. There was one in particular that I took some pictures of, which we'll get to at some point during this deep probing analysis video. And you can see I had to use a lot of grass on this thing as well, just to make it look a little less bare. But I like the idea of a kind of a graveyard overlooking this more open area down below. And of course I wanted to have some water in there because all my units, pretty much all of them, have some kind of water effect on the bases. So I thought that was a must. And put all my characters up there. Those are the only ones that actually fit in the little graveyard section. And here's everything else. So let's just go back to the shot here, and I'll go through my entire list while we're on this picture as well. So it was 1,995 points, which means you can only take 2 of any monsters, heroes and war machines and such, which limits you slightly in what you can take. But as you can see, I've gone for the Spearling formation as usual. I've got the Horde of Spearlings and the 2 regiments of Spearlings and the Master Sergeant, who is up at the top in front of the gravestones with the little bow there on foot. And they make up the We've Had a Second Breakfast formation, which gives them all Ensnare and Defense 4, which is very tasty. It makes them pretty tough to shift and a nice, solid kind of anvil for the army, if you will. Especially if you get them in difficult terrain, they're quite tough to break down. Then we've got some archers. Oh, by the way, the Horde of Spearlings also have the Brew of Strength, which I felt was pretty useful for them. It was either going to be that or the Hammer of Measured Force, but I've seen a lot of lists lately where defense isn't necessarily the big selling point. I've seen lots of mediocre defense armies that just have a lot of numbers out there. So I didn't want to run into anything that's just like a ton of hordes of Defense 3, for example, and that Brew of Strength wouldn't be very useful. Would be much more useful there than the Hammer of Measured Force. So then we've also got the Arch Horde, the Halfling Knight Regiment, which are not amazing, but I've got the models for them, so why not? Then we've got the Honour Guard, of course, the nice ghostly chicken riders, and they've got the Potion of the Caterpillar. Then for the heroes, other than the Master Sergeant, which I already mentioned, we've got an Army Standard Bearer who's not technically a halfling because it allows him to inspire everything, even units that aren't technically considered halflings, such as the Honour Guard. And he has got the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, so he can be Bane chanting everyone up to the eyeballs, giving them extra crushing strength. And when there's no one to apply that to, he can just try it and hope that it comes off on one of the shooting units. Then we've got a Duke on a Winged Arrowles, the smaller version with the Healing Brew. So not the big ancient one, because I find he's a bit too expensive and he's not that much better, to be honest. He has a couple of abilities that aren't that useful. Then the Halfling Sorcerer, who you can see on a skeletal steed up in the graveyard there, and he has Wind Blast and the Zephyr Crown, so his Wind Blast actually becomes damaging exactly the same as Colossal Nick's Wind Blast, which I thought would be a very good combo, having 2 Wind Blasts, 2 lots of 7, total of 14 Wind Blast, all of them with the ability to do damage as well, and they're not affected by cover, so both of these being height 2 meant that I could put them behind lots of my other units and still Wind Blast over the top of them unhindered, and do some damage there. Then we've got 2 Iron Beasts, one represented by the Malifaux Whiskey Golem there, and one the Giant Dead Crab. So they're going to be quite tasty and difficult to chew through. Then we've got 2 Halfling Volley Guns at the bottom there. That's of course the maximum you can take at anything below 2,000 points. So only 2 of those, I dare say. And moving on. So on the display board there's an interesting feature that we'll get to when we get to the back of it. There's the water there, a little cave underneath. And on the back there, you'll see that it's the only display board I've ever seen with a secret vampire room. There he is down there. A bit of Dungeon Saga furniture in there, since I never got around to using it for anything else, so I thought, why not? What do you need in a secret vampire chamber? Well, you could probably have a throne in there for him to sit on, and maybe some treasure. Mainly because I didn't have a coffin available. So he was just chilling down there all day. He took no part in the games, he was just there for decoration, and hopefully he got me some extra hobby points. Okay, on to game 1 then, after all that waffling. So, game 1. If you watched my warm-up games, you will have seen that the second warm-up game I had was against an Ogre army that looks eerily similar to this. That is possibly because it is exactly the same army. We just happened to be drawn against each other in round 1 after playing a practice game against each other the week before. So, spoiler alert if you haven't seen that yet, I won that game by kind of playing the scenario. Because I know I'm not going to be able to get through this army because there's a lot of hard-hitting meat in there. If I try and just face it head-on, I'm going to get whooped. So I'm going to have to try and be sneaky here and do something with the scenario. And the scenario is Plunder, which I don't think I've ever played before, where there are 5 objectives along the centre line, and 3 of them are worth 2 points. You pick one each that's worth 2, and then the centre one is also worth 2. So you'll see they're incorrectly marked at the moment, because the centre one is supposed to be worth 2 as well, and we put barrels on the ones that were worth 2. So we actually switched it over and put the barrels onto the 2 on the right later on, when we realised that the central objective was also worth 2. So the other 2, the ones on the right there, are only going to be worth 1 each, and unfortunately, because this Ogre army is such a concentrated mass of meat, I would very much like to have had the battle spread out a bit. If he had to split his army in 2, it's far less effective as far as I'm concerned, because it's really good when it's just combined together, doing lots of multi-charges, just killing seemingly unbeatable enemies in one round of combat. So unfortunately I lost the roll though, and had to place my 2-point objective first, so wherever I put it, he could just choose the one next to it, and then that side of the table would become the one where the battle was going to be mostly concentrated, unfortunately. So you can see the expensive objectives are over there on the left, and he has got, well, you can see the objectives here. And my deployment, on the right I've got my Halfling Knights out there, because there is an objective out there, so I had to put something on that side just to stop the enemy just immediately being on that area unopposed for the entire game. And in the middle I've got my Honour Guard, and you'll see what my battle plan is, because I've got a couple of these regiments of spearlings here, and a not the battle shrine, I've been using it as the battle shrine recently, but it is in fact an Iron Beast now. And then over on the left I've got my hordes, and I've got another Iron Beast. So you'll see that, let's just go back here, I've also got my Duke on that side. If you look at the objectives there, I've got my horde of spearlings and the Iron Beast there on the left, who would very much like to go and collect those 2 really expensive objectives. And there's a big piece of impassable terrain up there as well, so I'm going to be able to use that to kind of shield my flyer as it moves into position to threaten on the flank maybe, or get behind the enemy. And also I don't have to worry about being flanked from that side as I approach with my spearling horde and the Iron Beast, who can get that objective and then push into the middle and maybe flank on the enemy. And the Honour Guard are really just deployed as far away from the shooters as they could, and you can see the Ogre shooters are in actually the top left there. So they're going to be kind of brought in a little bit later. I'm not going to shove them straight in. I want the Ogres to be charging into my spearlings whenever possible, because they're going to be fairly tough to crack, but they're also expendable. So what do the Ogres have? Well, the shooters, there is just a small little troop of Red Goblin fleabags there. There are Ogre Warriors, there are Grokka-Gamok's finest braves, there's Grokka-Gamok himself, there is Nommer-Garok, I think is his name, and there is also a regular Warlock in there, I think, as well. There is a Goblin, a Red Goblin Bigot, there is the living legend he was using was Juggernaut John, who is good in combat, and there is a Chariot Warlord behind him. And then over on this side there's a lot less, because the cheaper objectives are over here, so there's only a Chariot Regiment and another Chariot Regiment. So it's the Chariot formation that gives them all additional nerve. And on turn 1. So it looks like I have got the turn 1, and I think I chose to get turn 1 because my army is really slow and I don't want the Ogres to get advanced of the objectives and just get straight into my lines early on, because even if I end up winning the battle to push them back, I may not actually be able to reach the objectives by the end in the centre, and there's likely to be Ogres behind Ogres in layers that can really hold you up, because there aren't really a lot of individuals in the Ogre army, so there's not going to be much overrunning going on for me. So I want to get up there fast and at least contest the centre of the table with the units I want him to be fighting, obviously. So you can see I've pushed the 2 spearling regiments forward, and over on this side my knights are actually slower than his chariots, but he's going to be edging forward very, very slowly with those chariots because he doesn't want to get within my charge range. So if he wants to come and get this objective, he's probably going to have to go a little bit faster than that. Otherwise he risks me getting the charge on him if he dives straight in there. If he decides to just edge up very slowly, he'll risk not being able to get the objective at all, because I'm going first. So on turn 6, his turn 6, he could potentially leap on the objective, and then if there's a turn 7 he would then get charged. So That's what I'm hoping for there, because my knights will be less expensive than his chariots, I would imagine, so I'm quite happy to do that kind of trade-off, them just staring at each other for the whole game if he's not going to commit. The Iron Beasts I find a good support for the Spearlings, because they can shoot over the top of them without hindrance with their breath attack, and then they're equally tough to kill, so whenever the Spearlings are dead they can just move in there and take their place. In the middle, the shooting stuff isn't really doing a lot of moving, and I'm pushing up the Spearlings as fast as they can go, which is very slow. They're going to get to the objective eventually though. And the Duke has positioned himself so he can fly over the top of this height 4 impassable terrain and get behind the enemy in a minute. And that means they're going to have to turn some stuff around to face him. So there you can see a nice wide shot, laying down the gauntlet in the middle a bit there, trying to draw them in. And turn 1 for the Ogres. So you can see that the Red Goblin Fleabags at the back have actually made their way to threaten where the Duke might land, which I'm perfectly okay with. I would be quite happy to be charged by them. They're probably not going to do anything to him. So I'll accept that. And Grokkagamok's Braves have moved up behind the hill there, so they're going to be a difficult target to shoot. And over on this side you can see him measuring to make sure he's not going into my charge range there with the chariots, and the other chariots are quite happily moving up though in the centre. And the shooters, what do? Well, combined with various lightning bolts and other shooting attacks that he's got, he puts a lot of damage onto one of my volley guns and takes it down. Wow, 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 wow. Let's see. Matt says the centre one is not worth 2. Well, maybe we're playing it wrong then. Someone corrected us, or told us that they were correcting us partway through the game, and that the middle one was actually worth 2 as well as the ones that we selected. So it looks like we were playing it wrong then. Let's see. Steve says, what have I missed? Well, you've missed me analysing my display board. You haven't missed much in terms of games yet. John says, toxic wind blast. Yes, the wind blast will be very toxic when it fires out there. It's definitely windy, alright. So 1 volley gun down. And you may think, well, the objectives are right in the centre of the table, so the enemy are going to have to walk towards them at some point during the game. Why not put the volley guns further back so they can't be shot? But the enemy has a significant shooting advantage in that the Ogre shooters have a 36-inch range. So they could just sit there all day and just shoot away at my shooty units, and that wouldn't be a fun time. So I want them to shoot early, before they get killed by shooters. It's kind of the nightmare matchup, really, when you come up with, when you've got your war machines at 24-inch range and the enemy has something that outranges them. So let's see what's going on here. So they're dead, and some pictures of the objectives for some reason. Oh, you can see here that one of my Spearling units has picked up an objective in my turn 2, and they're just prepared to be charged by all the Ogres now. Yep, so we're on to turn 2, and not much happened really. And you can see the Ogres are moving up now. I've got my Sorcerer down there because I want, if you think about it, my cavalry, both of them, the large cavalry and the regular cavalry, are both only speed 7, and the Ogre chariots are speed 8. So if I could have a bit of wind blast in there, that would help, because if he wants to fight me, he's going to have to get close enough so that he can't be blasted out of range, which means he would be within my charge range. So just to counteract that advantage he's got there. You can see my horde of Spearlings moving towards that objective. They should be able to get it next turn, and then what they want to do is pass it on to the Iron Beast, because he's really the perfect model for carrying tokens like that, because he's at speed 5 to begin with, so he doesn't get slowed down at all by carrying things, and he's defense 6 and just a big, hard to shift creature. And you can see I land the Duke behind enemy lines, and it's possibly a bit of a mistake on the placement of the Duke here, because I was thinking that this was actually a pretty good spot to have him in, and that the Fleabags wouldn't do any damage to him if they charged him. But what I should be thinking about is, worst case scenario, if he does take damage from them, can he still do his job? And unfortunately, because of I've got him so far left, it is possible for the Ogre shooters to be no longer an option for him to charge, because there are units around there that can prevent him from charging them. If the Fleabags charge in, there is also a Bigot around there somewhere that can act as a kind of blocking unit. So if they can stop him flying next turn, it's possible they can stop the rear charge onto the shooters. but we shall see. Turn 2 for the ogres. So you can see what I was talking about there. That's something I didn't really factor in. If I had angled him slightly differently, I could have positioned him better so that he was more to the right, and then it would have been much more difficult to stop him getting into the ogre shooters. I could have angled him downwards a bit as well. So yeah, there were other ways I could have positioned him. But there's usually a way you can block units off, but with flyers it often relies on you doing damage to them, and I was maybe too confident that those flea bags wouldn't do anything to him, just being a troop. But of course they only need to do one to stop him shooting. And the ogres are really pushing up here in the middle, as if to say, we want to fight. And you can see the chariots ready, poised to strike as well. If they get all their multi-charges in, those spearling regiments, as theoretically tough as they are, they will die, but that's okay with me. The other chariots are hanging back because they don't want to get charged by my knights. What do the shooters do this time? Along with some lightning bolt, well, they kill the other volley gun. So wow, wow, wow. And then after the combat, you can see here that they do actually inflict that one damage that they needed. So he's now not going to be able to charge those ogre shooters, unfortunately, because the angles just don't work out. So we'll see what I've got to remedy that. You can see that I just keep edging my knights backwards a little bit, just out of his charge range, inviting him to come into my charge range so that I can't back out of his. If he wants a fight, then I'm going to be the one initiating it, basically. And we'll see if he's willing to take the risk I was talking about earlier, where on turn 6 he would have to dive in there and get that objective and hope there isn't a turn 7 when I can charge him. Because he doesn't have enough space to make me back away far enough over the course of the game so that he would be safe in that turn. Okay, you can see that I've pushed in my spearlings into combat there because, well, first of all I dropped the objective and the Iron Beast has picked it up. He's backing away, and that one is going to be worth 2 because we were playing it incorrectly, apparently. And the centre one shouldn't also be worth 2, but we were playing as if it was by this point. So that one's worth 2, and he's just got it there, and he's going to start moving backwards. The Honour Guard are just hanging out there, and the Wizard ready to wind blast. So the Spearlings know they're going to die, but they're just throwing their lives away to allow the Iron Beast to back away a bit, hopefully. And they do a bit of damage in combat. One of them went into Juggernaut John, one of them went into the Berserker Braves. And over on the left, my Spearling Horde do pick up the objective. Next turn they're going to drop that for the Iron Beast and then hopefully get stuck into combat. So you can see I'm very much thinking about the scenario rather than killing the enemy here, which is what I tend to do when I think that the opposing army is stronger than mine. Just trying to kind of weasel my way into an advantageous scenario position. You can see a wonderful enemy hand shot there, and my Duke killed the Fleabags on the counter charge. As you would expect, they're not a very powerful unit at all, so he's now threatening big time down there. The Ogre Shooters, I mean, is he going to take the risk and leave them facing in that direction when he may not do any damage? He may not kill off the Duke, or if he's going to charge it, he may not do any damage. So it's possible that if he leaves the shooters facing that way, they could get rear-charged next turn, which would be 15 attacks hitting on 3s, which would be really bad news. That would probably be enough to kill them without that much luck. So you can see the nice wide shot here. The plan is going okay at this stage. The Spearlings are obviously going to die, but I've got the Honour Guard there ready to countercharge. I've got my Spearlings on the left coming in. I've got some shooting left. It would be nice if I still had the volley guns alive, because that way, if the Ogres do get through the Spearlings, they would just meet a sea of lead, but unfortunately both of them were killed. And here's what's going to happen to the Spearlings. They're just going to get eaten. And I think this is Nogogrok, or whatever his name is, the living legend, the named wizard character for the Ogres, and the Bigot have both gone into the Duke, hoping to just do 1 damage to stop him flying. And this little stare down and shuffle continues, which, as I said, I'm quite happy with. My knights aren't that valuable. And the shooters do decide they can't risk it and they have to turn round, so that's good. So the Duke has now taken out a unit, and he's distracted multiple units, and he's prevented the Ogre shooters from shooting anything this turn. So he's really paid for himself already at this stage. So one regiment of Spearlings go down, and the other one goes down as well. And they just turn to face their doom, because obviously the Honour Guard can just pick a unit and kill it, which is going to be the Chariots, because they're the closest. And they do 2 damage to the Duke, so he's not going to be able to fly, and we measured to see whether he would be able to fit through that crevice there between the units, and unfortunately he won't, so he's going to have to countercharge one of those. Turn 4, so, well, this continues obviously. The Honour Guard do steam in there and kill the Chariots, and they'll be hoping that they can stand up to 1 round of combat from the Berserker Braves, which is very possible. I think the Master Sergeant is in range to very inspire them. And the Iron Beast is just moving away with the token there. Berserker, the Grokkagamok's finest Braves are not to be sniffed at though. They can definitely kill a powerful unit in one go. They have a lot of attacks. So with my Wind Blast and Master Sergeant shooting ability, just little bits of wounds here and there are just plinked onto enemy units. Not enough to worry them at this stage though. And my archers, and over here you can see puts a bit of damage onto the Braves there. Not enough to kill them, they've got quite high nerve. And you can see he's got his chariot right behind them to prevent them from being wind blasted as well. Which is what you've got to do. It kind of forces your hand when you're against so much wind blast. You have to put units behind each other to stop them being nudged around so much. And you can see I've got the objective onto my Iron Beast now. So, my Duke countercharged into Nomagorok. I may get his name right at least once during this game. And 2 damage on him. Obviously, countercharging the individual would have been foolish, because then there would have been a flank charge from someone who's not an individual, which would have meant extra attacks. But the shooter's still facing the wrong way while that fight is ongoing. So, the Honour Guard could potentially get charged by multiple units, which would be bad news, but they should be inspired there. And there is the Iron Beast, which the Iron Beast surviving is really the key goal here. And there's not that many turns left, so if the Iron Beast can get away without taking much damage next turn with the objective, then that would be very good news. Turn 4 for the Ogres. So they're obviously focusing on the Iron Beast there, the Chariot and Juggernaut John going to the Iron Beast, rather than doing a double charge on the Honour Guard. So that tells you where the priorities are, because obviously it's risky just sending 1 unit into the Honour Guard. They're not that easy to kill, so it's going to be close whether they die or not. And the Iron Beast probably won't get killed by the 2 units that have charged it, but he wants to make a start on damaging it so he can steal that valuable token. You can see the Ogre warriors there have picked up a token as they advance on the centre. And the Duke gets killed because the shooters decide, well, you know what, we're just sitting here doing nothing, we might as well have a go and charge the Duke. And they kill him. It looks like he's only taken 6 damage, but it must have been some good nerve rolls to get rid of him, which it was in fact. So the Iron Beast takes a bit of damage there, not enough to kill it, as predicted, but the Honour Guard do go down. They took quite a lot of damage from Grokkagamok's Braves, and they are toast. So that gamble for the Ogres has paid off there, only sending 1 unit into the Honour Guard. Because you don't want to be facing counter-charging Honour Guard. Even though they'll lose their Thunderous Charge, they would still potentially make mincemeat of those Braves who were already on 7 damage. So it was a risk, but it's paid off for them. Turn 5, and again this is just going on. That's going to continue. The Iron Beast decides he's going to countercharge. Now, there's a mistake in positioning coming up here. So the Iron Beast countercharges Juggernaut John, thinking he's already damaged, might be able to take him out. And unfortunately, the Iron Beast is going to be able to be flank charged by the Chariot, because I didn't put my hero close enough to it. You can see it's slightly further back than the base there. So, and there wasn't really any thinking behind where I was positioning it. I just put it in such a way so that it would be nice and balanced on the hill and definitely wouldn't fall over. But really I should have been thinking more savvy than that and put him a bit closer so that the Iron Beast couldn't be flank charged. And my Iron Beast with the token there on the left, he's not really in danger at the moment, and my Spearling Horde are in difficult terrain are also not in danger. And I really want that token that the Ogre warriors have there, and to that end I've got all my shooting targeting them. I've got the Iron Beast breath attack. I've got my archers still down there, and I think the Master Sergeant is still alive, and the Wind Blast. And his Wind Blast as well, actually. They push that unit backwards and do quite a bit of damage on them. So that's how that's looking, and oh, look at this, some sweet, sweet measuring action going on here. And you can see that, when was this? This is probably before he's even moved any of his stuff. Okay, now we're on Ogre turn 5, and you can see there's just enough room for that flank charge there because of my foolishness. So that's something to be mindful of there. And you can see that the Braves have turned and they're facing the other objectives now, so they're going to be heading off in that direction. He's confident that they're not required over here, or just they're too far away to help out, really. And then he's positioning everything there so they're not going to get flank charged by any of my units. And at this point, the Ogre chariots decide, well, this is enough just staring at each other. We're going to dive onto this objective, take it, and accept that we're going to get charged. And they'll just hope to survive a round of combat, which they very well may do, but we shall see. And you can see that the Ogre warriors have passed their objective off to the character behind them, who may well be old Grokkagamok. So that's a big advantage for Ogres in scenarios like this, when you're carrying objectives around, or even when you're just scoring in general. All their characters, apart from Goblin Bigots, are also able to score and carry objectives around, carry loot tokens. So it's going to be dicey, looking difficult for me at this stage. So the Iron Beast gets killed as a result of that flank charge there, and the token is stolen. So that's bad. And that's how they're looking afterwards. Other than that, not a huge amount going on there. So Mr. Windblast, Mr. Colossal Nick, is on 6 points of damage from the shooting from the Ogres. Okay, turn 6 for the Halflings. So, the Halfling Knights, the one activity they've been waiting all game to get into, charging into those chariots, they've done it, 5 damage and a waver. Perfectly acceptable. Then, the Windblast Sorcerer and the Windblasty ability from Colossal Nick as well, both targeted this unit of Berserker Braves because I really needed them to be killed because they were going to close in on and pick up an objective next turn, so I needed everything that could possibly shoot at them to do so. The downside of this is that if it didn't come off, I would be pushing them onto an objective and also closer to my knights. But I decided the risk was worth it because I needed to kill them, otherwise I was definitely not going to win this game. Unfortunately, as you can see, I don't kill them, I do push them onto the objective, and I've actually pushed them into charge range of the flank of my knights now, so that risk did not pay off, but if I could go back I would do exactly the same again, because as long as they're alive I was not going to win this game. You can see how Colossal Nick positioned himself so he could see them, so he's going to get charged next turn, but he's okay with that. Then over here I managed to get the double charge with my Spearling Horde and the Iron Beast and waver those Ogre warriors there. And that's how it's looking on that side. So it's not a totally lost cause yet, I've got an objective, but I could have done with taking out those warriors in one go and then being possibly able to get through into the old Grokster back there. And you can see on this side, so the Ogre Shooters, who have obviously got that big piece of terrain to deal with there, the Red Goblin Bigot positions himself to prevent them from going into the difficult terrain on the charge. There was just enough space to do that. And that's going to possibly kill that unit now with shooters in the flank. Well, they're not amazing at fighting, so you never know. And, yeah, unfortunately, that Wind Blast attempt, it blasted them a lot of inches, but I rolled badly on the wound rolls for them. So it didn't do nearly as many wounds as inches that they were blasted. So unfortunately, they were able to flank my knights, which is going to kill them easily. Colossal Nick's probably going to die to Juggernaut John there. And the other characters just reposition themselves a bit just to hide. So obviously the knights get killed, so that objective is going to remain in Ogre control. He manages to double one Colossal Nick actually, so he's going to be alright. And the horde do get killed by the flank charge from the shooters as well. So it's not looking good, but it's still not totally lost. It's still possible that I can claim more tokens here, but let's see. And that chariot is heading over there to try and pick that one up. And there is a turn 7, so let's see if it can be turned into a magnificent turn, and not particularly. So I managed to kill those ogres, but I already had the token with the Iron Beast. And all my shooting moves over there to try and kill off a unit to get more points, but unfortunately can't kill them. And nothing else dies either from any of my attacks, so I'm not able to make anyone drop a token, which wouldn't have mattered that much anyway because they've got plenty of units around to pick them up. So it's going to be an ogre win, but what else can they kill on this turn? Well, they can certainly shoot down Colossal Nick to finish him off, and they charge into the Iron Beast to do some damage on him, but he is okay. And you can see who's got a token at the end, so I do have one, but unfortunately the ogres have several. So the ogres win the game, and out of 20 points, the amount of stuff I killed wasn't that vast, which put me on about 7 points out of 20, I think there. So this is the display board I was mentioning earlier, the one that clearly took a lot of time and effort. You may have seen it on Facebook, but I mean, look at that, floating islands, waterfalls, but it doesn't have a secret vampire chamber, so I'm afraid that puts it at least a notch below my display board. But very, very nice. Obviously, if you want to have a better look at this, you can check out Facebook, the Kings of War Fanatics, or you can just pause this video in glorious HD and have a look. Very, very nice indeed. Now, on to game 2, and what would I very much not like to face after just losing to ogres? Probably more ogres, and probably a very similar list as well. That's what I wouldn't like to come up against, but unfortunately that is exactly what I'm going to be facing. Now you can see here that it's a very, very similar list. There's chariots, but there are some differences as well. There are some goblins, and the scenario here, can I even remember what the scenario is? Because we've got a big red dot in the centre there. Okay, I remember now. It is the push scenario where you have to take the objectives into the enemy half on your own units. So that's a scenario that I was looking forward to getting because that's what my Iron Beasts are kind of in there for, to carry tokens around. They're good at it. So, do I fancy my chances? Well, let's look at this list. So there are some shooters, much like the previous list. There's some red goblin fleabags there. There is a warlock, more chariots, there's another warlock, there is a colossal Nick, so the same as mine. There is, I think they're hunters, the ogres there, they have ensnare, and there are some boomers, and some more chariots, and a couple of goblin bigots and more goblin fleabags. So more goblin action, no Grocky's finest braves, but there are some boomers and other scary things in there. So we'll see how I can cope with this one. And I've gone for my honour guard on the left flank there. I've got a little shooting block, protected kind of, because when I saw that the enemy have 2 goblin bigots, I thought I need something to act as a little bit of a deterrent for my war machines, and I don't want them just killing a war machine and then getting behind my lines, because I don't have much flyer defence. So if I stick my flyer behind, if I put my one unit of spearlings in front, then goblin bigots are by no means guaranteed to kill a war machine in one go. So I could potentially get a counter charge on it, and mainly just as a deterrent. And my honour guard there as well, because you can see this flank. There's a lot of goblin-y action on there, so they're not going to want to mess around with the honour guard because they would just get smushed, and the chariots back there and the boomers. So really I've got my honour guard away from the shooters again, which is a ploy that I would always try and use there, because you don't want them getting gunned down. They would be a prime target if they were within sight and range. You can see Nick there next to the little artillery battery, and the Windblast Sorcerer as well as there. Then to the right of them we've got a horde of spearlings backed up by an Iron Beast carrying 1 push token. Then we've got my archers, and the other Iron Beast is over there with the other regiment, and he's carrying 2 push tokens with the Master Sergeant over there to inspire everybody, and my knights are just in the woods there. So, turn 1. And the ogres go first. I may have won the roll-off actually and let the ogres go first, or I don't remember. Or they may have won it and decided to. Can't remember now. But you can see the goblins have moved up into charge range of my war machines there on the left. Everything else is just pushing up. The chariots are staying behind because they don't want to get gunned down. They obviously feel that they're a prime target. And over on this side, there's a bit of an advance with the flea bags there. On the right, everything else is not entering the woods yet. There is also the push token in the centre of the table as well, which is partly in the woods there. And that can be quite important because if both armies end up kind of bypassing each other and getting the tokens into the enemy half, that central one, whoever claimed that, will have the advantage. So some damage put out onto the volley gun there from the caster and from Nick's wind blast ability. I think it was probably just the lightning bolt that did that. I don't think Nick would be in range yet. And then the warlock there puts damage onto this unit of spearlings, and the volley gun is wavered, which I'm okay with because it means that not only could it possibly fire later, but also it's going to attract more enemy shooting in future turns that could have been targeted at something else, for example the other volley gun. So there's how it's looking at the end of that turn. Not a huge advance from the ogres, they're playing it quite conservatively at this stage. Turn 1 for Raudio. So the halfling knights charge straight into those flea bags that put themselves there, and then kill them in one go and just back up into the woods quite happily. So because you can see how close they were to the woods there. So then backing up into the woods just to make sure that they would have cover from the shooters up there who are probably going to target them in a minute because the knights are obviously a threat to them. And the Iron Beast moving up behind the spearlings there. Even though the spearlings don't actually provide cover to the Iron Beast, I don't want the Iron Beast being charged by things particularly. I would rather the spearlings were charged first because of course they have ensnare and they're not carrying any tokens. You can see my wind blasty characters there have both moved up so they can use their ability this turn. And they use it to good effect to push back the boomers and the enemy Nick, so that means the boomers are probably going to be out of range to shoot next turn. My Honour Guard have positioned themselves just in case anything comes over that hill, and I've moved my Duke back a little bit I think, or I may not have moved it at all, but I've still got everything set up to try and deal with the goblin bigots that come in, because they are obviously a big threat. And I'm fully expecting the goblin bigots to charge in to my volley guns at the first opportunity, because he obviously sees them as a threat since he's got chariots hiding behind a hill waiting for the volley guns to be dealt with, but maybe you'd rather shoot them. Turn 2. So, much to my surprise, the two goblin bigots do not charge anything. They instead elect to sit there and shoot at the volley guns in a very blurry image there, but one of them went up to 3 damage. Then one of the warlocks and the enemy Nick combined get that volley gun up to 6 damage and push my Nick back a bit and put some damage on him. And then ogre shooters up there put some damage onto the spearlings. They decide not to shoot at the knights in cover. They'd rather focus on the spearlings that are providing some assistance to the Iron Beast that's carrying the tokens. And they do get killed. But the volley gun does not get killed. Both of them survive, in fact. That one takes damage, but they're both going to be fine for next turn, which means they're going to be able to start shooting. And you can see that my knights are going to be able to position themselves hopefully so that I can charge those shooters but not be shot by them. I think it should be possible to set that up. They are nimble, but we'll see when we get there. So turn 2, and I'm not sure if I've got them positioned to avoid being shot, but I had to position them so they could charge the front of the unit and not the flank, because the flank is actually blocked by that terrain, so they wouldn't physically be able to fit in there. So I had to make sure I was in their front, which is going to mean that they can shoot me, unfortunately. And the Iron Beast is just pushing up as fast as it can go, so there's 2 threats there for the ogre shooters and they can't deal with both of them. Then my Master Sergeant, who's quite happy to just wander out into no man's land because he's stealthy and he can just shoot at a wider variety of targets, he actually plinks off some shots onto the ogre shooters just to soften them up a bit so whoever charges them is more likely to kill them. And you can see that my spearling horde actually pivoted onto the objective in the centre. They moved up a bit, did a little bit of a pivot, and they've picked up the objective without going into the woods, which is crucial because now they're not going to be charged next turn by all those nasty ogre units sitting on the other side, presumably waiting for them to go and pick it up. So the fact that they've got the push token from the middle means that next turn they can just drop it for the Iron Beast and position themselves ready for this hindered multi-charge that's likely to come in soon. Over here we've got my windy characters, and they actually kill the enemy's Colossal Nick with their double Wind Blast attack, so that's nice. No Wind Blast for the enemy now. And then my little artillery battery, what do? Well, they kill off one of the Goblin Bigots, and the other one's sitting on 2 wounds, so one of them is going to be able to charge next turn. There's how it's looking. So the Ogre's still kind of sitting back a bit. I was expecting more aggression from them, but obviously concerned by that artillery battery, and rightly so, I would say, but they did have the opportunity to charge them with the Bigots. Turn 3, so the Ogre Shooters, what do? They delete the Knights, which isn't too unexpected because, of course, Knights don't stand up to a huge amount of punishment, and he thought it was more likely to kill them than the Iron Beast. Rightly so, I would say. And the Bigot there does charge into the volley gun, but you can see it's only a waiver. Like I said, they're not guaranteed. Having run Goblin characters myself and charged them into war machines and then being disappointed when they don't kill things in one go, it's certainly not a guarantee, so that Goblin Bigot is going to get charged. You can see everything else advancing. The Boomers actually get to within range of the Sorcerer and waver it. So they've been able to shoot, but they've put themselves out in range to be shot now as well. My Honour Guard are still just kind of chilling, because there's no need to push them in at this stage. I've got the advantage, I've picked up the token there, and it's really just a case of will the Ogres commit and come in and actually get into my charge range. Because I've got a lot of shooting down here as well. Okay, turn 3. So, the Iron Beast charges into the shooters who are already wounded from shooting and kills them. So that's good. He's then turned around to face that Warlock, carrying 2 tokens still, and he's obviously in the push scenario, getting the tokens into enemy territory is a big deal, and that's exactly what the Iron Beast has done here. And there aren't too many enemies around there to deal with him who don't have other pressing matters, so he's quite safe for the moment. Then you can see the Master Sergeant just goes running off willy-nilly, and the archers, and there's some damage inflicted to that Ogre Warlock up there. And down here, you can see the token has been dropped by the Spearling Horde, and the Iron Beast has picked it up. So that's going to be tough for the Ogres to chew through, because they're going to be making hindered charges when they do eventually get into my Spearlings there. Hindered into an ensnaring phalanx wall with a decent amount of nerve and defence. And then, if they get through that, the Iron Beast is there, sitting there with the tokens, who is definitely not easy to kill. And I've still got lots of shooting around here. So, obviously the Goblin Bigot gets killed with the flank charge from the Spearling regiment there. So it wasn't guaranteed to kill that, of course. They're not going to be getting extra attacks since it's individual. And the Duke has just moved up into a threatening position there between the war machines. Wasn't concerned about blocking up the volley gun there because it was already wavered. You can see though that I've wind blasted those boomers back again, got them up to 7 damage. And down here you can see that that Goblin Bigot died. And Honour Guard still just sitting back. They're quite a nice deterrent as well, because those Ogre chariots really don't want to come over the wall, over the hill, while there's Honour Guard around here, and also volley guns. So we'll see if the Ogres are going to commit, because they have to at some point, because they are losing the game as it stands. Turn 4, and the Warlock just sneaks around the side of the Iron Beast, doesn't want to engage it, just wants to chill out next to him and not get charged. And the Fleabags decide to go in to charge the Sorcerer, who's damaged already, and they'll hope to overrun him and also carry on into Colossal Nick there, should he survive the shooting barrage that he's about to face. But he actually dies from the lightning bolts and such that he faces. And then the Fleabags there do kill the Sorcerer. So I've lost all my Wind Blast now. But it's still looking fairly healthy. I've got lots of tokens, and some of them are in enemy territory. You can see that the Ogres have turned a chariot regiment from the centre, away from my horde, away from the big blob of tokens, and towards my other blob of tokens, which is the Iron Beast. And they are the unit that are in the woods for the ogres are the hunters, I think they're called. So they're the ones with ensnare. So you could have a big pillow fight coming up in the middle now. Turn 4. So I decide I'm going to go for the charge, because why not? They don't have as much support as they did because of the chariots turning away, so I thought, well, why not have a go? It's going to be hindered, but I don't mind. And even when the enemy are hitting back, even though they won't be hindered, they've still got ensnare to worry about. And that's fine. Over here, the Iron Beast just moves backwards. So he just wants to get out of charge range of the chariots that are facing this way. And even if he can't, he's got himself in such a way that they would have to go over that wall, which would make them very ineffective against defense 6, really. You can see the Master Sergeant has worked his way all the way up here as well, and he's going to be plinking off shots at people. And my archers as well. So down here, the Honour Guard have actually pushed in a bit now. They've stayed out of range of the chariots, but if I can... I think the chariots, if they haven't moved already, they will do in a minute, but we'll get to that. So the Fleabags there are charged, double charged by the regiment of Spearlings and the Duke. It's hindered, but that's fine. I do manage to waver them, but there's really no threats to this area now. Some of the ogres have either turned away or they're still waiting behind the hill, so I can throw more things in with reckless abandon without worrying about what's behind. So this volley gun has a nice clear shot at the boomers and finishes them off. So they are toast, and they were carrying a loot token as well, or a push token should I say. Turn 5 for the ogres. So double charge into the horde of Spearlings, which I wasn't concerned about because even if they die, that's not really a big deal. I've got quite a bit to deal with that, and the chariots at the back aren't facing in this direction, so I wasn't too worried there. And not much going on there. And you can see now the chariots have decided they're not going to come over the hill this way. They're too worried about the volley guns, presumably, who are both going to be eligible to shoot next turn, so they've instead run off over in that direction. They feel that perhaps the middle is going to be more vital because my push tokens, if you look, I've got 2 on the Iron Beast in the middle, 2 all the way out there on the right. So messing about on the left isn't going to win the game, so redistributing the resources here is probably the name of the game for the ogres. Turn 5 for Ordia. So what does Mr. Master Sergeant do? And the Iron Beast? Well, the Iron Beast now has no Warlock next to him, so the Master Sergeant killed him, which is nice. And the Iron Beast is going to keep staying out of range of chariots. The archers, well, look at that. The chariots that were actually facing the Iron Beast get wavered on a double 6, which is really just rubbing salt into the ogre's wounds now. Those golden troll dice have been doing quite well for me so far. And over here, I countercharge into the chariot with the Spearlings, because not only does the chariot have less attacks, so when it countercharges and won't be hindered by the terrain, that's less attacks that are coming in unhindered, but also it doesn't have ensnare, so I'm more likely to do something to it. And also, not to mention the fact that if I countercharged a wider unit, there's more chance of being flanked. I'm not sure if that's relevant here, but that's always something to consider, who you countercharge and what it leaves you vulnerable to afterwards. And you can see that there is damage put onto that chariot there, 5 points. The Iron Beast moved up and is going to use his breath attack on the hunters and put some damage on them. And the Fleabags are dead. The Duke and the Spearling Regiment finished them off, so they're in a position to help out now. So it's looking very, very healthy. The ogres are kind of getting surrounded, and they should be getting increasingly desperate now because they're not carrying enough tokens, and they're very much losing at this stage. Look at that opponent hand up there. Okay, so this is the ogre's plan to deal with this. The chariot has actually got out of there entirely, and the hunters have gone into the horde hoping to kill that, but the ogres seem to be pulling back a bit, and the 2 units of chariots that are just chilling around at the back there, I'm not sure whether they're going to reach the Iron Beast in time, but probably not. The horde does get killed, sadly, but that's not a big deal. There is a loot token on those guys, but it's probably not going to be enough to help at this stage because they are now open to a charge from multiple units, which you'll see in a moment. So, turn 6. The Honour Guard and the Iron Beast carrying the token charge into those ensnaring hunters there. but they don't mind that ensnare one bit and just take them down big time. So they're toast. And the Duke decides that he's going to land on a push token, not because it's necessarily going to be wise for his survival, but because even if he does get charged, all he's doing is preserving the life of these units. So I don't want anyone going after the Iron Beast who's got 2 tokens, so I would rather just have multiple units that have 1, so the enemy can't just focus on 1, which is why the token that was stolen off the Ogres goes to the Honour Guard there, and another one is just picked up by the Duke. So he's just a bit of bait, really. If anyone charges him, I don't mind, because I've still got a ton of tokens. And it's a little bit of a mess for the Ogres in the middle there. Very much surrounded. And the Iron Beast is just backing away, so he's just safe now, that Iron Beast. With 2 tokens in the enemy half, he's going to be fine. The Master Sergeant is actually laying down the gauntlet there. This Master Sergeant is kind of bait, asking if they want to charge him, because I've got some shooting down there. The Halfling Archer Horde is below us right now, so if they want to charge the Master Sergeant, they will then be shot. And at this stage, I think I'm already going to win the game, so I might as well try and get more kill points. So if I can lure them out into the open, I can shoot them more easily. So putting a Master Sergeant out there is a bit of bait. And the volley guns are moving as well. When they don't have any targets, you might as well move them into a better position, since they're not going to be shooting anyway. And there's how it looks in the centre. And there is a turn 7. So what are the Ogres going to do with that? Well, they charge the Master Sergeant, and the Chariot Warlord goes after the Duke with the token. Doesn't kill him though, 8 damage. And the Chariots do kill off the Master Sergeant, so he threw away his life, but hopefully I can kill them now. And then on my turn 7, what can I kill? Well, the Chariot dies, flank charge from the Honour Guard, with their Caterpillar Potion, of course. They just love charging through difficult terrain. The Duke just... did the Duke kill anybody? No, he just moved out of the way. And the Iron Beast killed the Warlock in the middle, continuing its rampage. And I managed to put some damage onto those chariots, but couldn't kill them. So at the end, the Iron Beast carrying 2 there, this one carrying 2, this one carrying 3 in fact, 1 on the Honour Guard, 1 on the Duke. So all 7 push tokens were in my possession, and all 7 of them were in enemy territory, so you can't get much more of a win than that. That's a very hefty win, and lots of killing, only a couple of chariot units left, so I've got about 18 or 19 points, can't remember exactly, but it wasn't quite 20, probably 19 there. So, we're on to game 3, which is the final game of day 1, and I'm up against Dwarves, and you can see an opponent's face just sneaking into the shot there. I did ask him if that was alright, if his face was featured on this video, and he didn't mind one bit. He's obviously very proud of his facial hair collection he's got going on there. So, Dwarves. Very apt that someone with such a beard would be playing Dwarves, and it's a big wall of really tough Dwarves going on here. So there's lots of defence, and I'll go through exactly what is in the list. This is after his Vanguard moves have been made, because there are 3 little blobs of Rangers that have moved up, 3 regiments of those, and Herneus the Hunter as well. So that's a lot of units to move up early on, and then being able to shoot early in the game. So, this scenario is just kill. I don't think I've ever had just a kill scenario tournament before, but it is in the new Clash of Kings books. They've decided to go with it. Kill. No objectives, just murder everything and kill more than your opponent does. And with the terrain set up in this one, you'll notice, because the players have been placing the terrain, I've got lots of shooting, so I've been trying to position the big view-obstructing terrain out on the flanks wherever possible, which is why you see that big pyramid over there. I definitely placed that out there, because I don't want that being in the middle of the table blocking the view of my units to shoot. I would rather have things like difficult terrain and walls being in the middle, much more than anything that completely obscures view. So, there is a hill in the middle as well, and that's going to be interesting because it allows the Dwarf Rangers to get up there and ignore the Halfling Infantry and shoot directly into the likes of the Honour Guard without worrying about any cover if they're on that hill. But it does bring them closer to the fight. So, on this flank, I've got most of my fighty stuff really, because the way I deployed There's not much going on the left flank at all. I put my main blob in the middle there. As you can see, I've got all the spearlings, and waited for my opponent to put some big blocks down in kind of towards the left centre as I look at it, and then I just put a big wall of shooting there and both my wind blast heroes. So I'm hoping all that stuff is so slow I can just shoot the hell out of it and then blast them back when they get closer. And on this side, I'm very confident that I can win the battle if it's just a straight slugfest between those dwarves. They're rangers, so they've got a bit of a shooting edge, but that hill means that they can't necessarily shoot everything they want to without climbing up there, which puts them closer to me fighting them. So let's see how it goes, because it's rare that I actually have the opportunity to just game plan for killing everything rather than an actual scenario, so we'll see how I do here. There's that big block of death, and there's my shooty block of death. So I've got all my shooting stuff in difficult terrain, which means they're going to get cover while they're in it. And there is also, you can see, let's just go through the enemy list actually. So there's a Berserker Brocklord, there's 3 regiments of Rangers, there's Heneas, there's a Battle Drill, there's Dark Lord Dan, which is one of the Living Legend characters, and it's fairly fighty, and it can fly once per game, so I'm going to have to be wary of that. It's on a large base though. Then there is a Bulwarkers Horde. There are 2 small units, I believe they are Iron Guard, is it Iron Guard that are defense 6? I think that's what they are, and there's also Golluck's Fury, which is the big steel behemoth at the back there that has a tasty gun on it, and there's also the Dwarf piece of artillery. Is that the Iron Belcher, is that what it's called? It's a bit like the volley gun. So turn 1, and the halflings are going first, so I just immediately get straight up there on this flank, because that's what I want to do. I want to close in on all those rangers, not just let them shoot me from on top of the hill. So straight up there as fast as they can go. And over on the shooty side, not much movement at all, just manoeuvring into position a little bit, shooting off into that horde, making a start on them. They're defense 6 in the front because they have big shield, the Bulwarkers, so I'm just slowly whittling away at them. The other ones might not be Iron Guard. They might only be defense 5, the others there, but I can't remember now. Either way, they're still pretty tough, and Heneas the Hunter gets wind blasted off the hill, I think, if he was on there, and he takes a bit of damage. And I actually waver a unit of Rangers as well in a very blurry image there. And turn 1 for the Dwarves, so what do? Well, because, I don't know if there's actually a picture of it, but my Duke is sitting behind the pyramid, which is just in shot there at the bottom left, so he's forced to turn his, is it Iron Belcher it's called? Turns that to face them, to face that spot where it might land, and he's also turned one of the units round there as well, which is fine by me because that Duke isn't that expensive and he's tying up multiple units now. Also in the first turn, I moved one of my volley guns slightly so that it had range on, or I may have moved my archers so they had range on his volley gun, but the volley gun didn't have range on them, something like that. I think it was one of my volley guns. I pivoted it in such a way so that I had range on its corner, but it wouldn't have range on mine. There is a way you can do it because of the way that the distance is drawn. So obviously Golluck's Fury backing up the Bulwarkers there, which is a really dangerous proposition, and it's going to be tough to bring that down, but I'm fairly confident. I think the damage may have, oh no, it's in the back there, it's not been moved up. So the Rangers are moving off the hill because they don't want to be charged, and being off the hill still allows them to shoot my Honour Guard, who are taller than the hill, but it does mean that they get cover now. So forcing them off the hill has given me cover. And what do? Well, they chip away 1 damage on the Honour Guard, a couple of damage onto that Spearling regiment there. Turn 2 for the Halflings. So the horde of Spearlings just gone straight up onto the hill, as if to say, everyone come and charge me, and also prevent them from shooting over the hill at the Honour Guard, because that hill is now height 3 with a unit on it, so they won't be able to shoot the Honour Guard over the top. They can still shoot the Iron Beasts, but they're defense 6, they don't mind about a few arrows plinking off them. And the Halfling Knights have moved around the flank there, so if those Rangers stay there, I can actually see their flank and charge them, but they can't see me because of where their front facing is, so they're going to have to move. Presumably they're going to go for some kind of multi-charge on the Spearling Horde, which is exactly what I want. And then I've got this little traffic jam going on down here with the Spearling units and the Iron Beasts as backup. The Iron Beasts will be doing their breath attack over the top, and I'll be wind blasting over the top as well. So bits of damage plinked away onto Dark Lord Dan and one of the ranger units there. And then my gun battery here with the 2 volley guns and the archers, what do? Well, they've put more damage onto the Bulwarkers and Golluck's Fury there. And my Duke decides, you know what, I'm not going to land right in the middle of the targets of the sighter for the Dwarven artillery. We're going to actually move this way instead and just chill out facing down the enemy flank and see if anyone leaves their flank open to be charged. Because, really, you don't want to land and just immediately get gunned down. So you can see a better look at that, how that's positioned. So, in the middle, kind of slow dwarves, slowly marching towards my gun line, and the battle on the right hand side, I'm confident that I have the edge there. Now the dwarves could of course turn to the right, as I'm looking at it, turn to their left and try and start moving into my flank, but they're not very fast, those units, and if they do that they're just still going to be eating shots from my gun battery, so they need something to bring that stuff down. They don't have a lot of speed though. If they had the Berserker Lord on Brock over here, that would be more of a threat, but he's working his way around the back, he's not going to get there for a while. So Golluck's Fury there, and you can see the Berserker Lord has actually gone all the way over there now in this turn to help out, and it kills one of the volley guns with its gun, so that's a good round for him. And this unit of Spearlings become wavered, and the other one has been charged by Dan. And, well, isn't this interesting? So the Rangers are not going to charge into that ensnaring block, so they haven't taken that particular bait. They've gone up onto the hill so they can shoot, and the Battle Driller on its own has gone into the Horde. Interesting. Also, the Iron Belcher has started moving up there. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And you can see the Bulwarkers are actually bypassing my central block and they're going towards my gun battery. So these two halves of the enemy, of opposing armies, are just walking straight past each other and making sure that they're not going to be flank charging each other as well. And, I mean, look at that. Wavers the Horde with a Battle Driller on only 3 damage with a 6/6. Wow, 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 wow. So, is it the worst news? It's not the worst ever, but it's not great either, because it does hold me up a bit. And the Dark Lord puts 1 damage onto that regiment there, which is fine. So we've got 2 wavered units there, which does block things up a bit, but I do have plenty of shooting still. So my Knights are going to be able to charge. So you can see damage that's being inflicted now, and the Dark Lord has taken a bit of damage there. And okay, here we are, turn 3. So the charge in there with my Knights up onto the hill into the Rangers, which is the only option for them really, but he's prevented me getting in their flank. And over here not much can take place, but Dan is charged, countercharged by my Spearlings there. The other ones are wavered, so they can't do anything. You can see I've moved back my wind blasting characters away from the enemy, and they're going to be blasting. They blast the Bulwarkers back a fair distance and do some damage as well. I had to blast with the Sorcerer first to get Nick into their front arc so that he wouldn't be pushing them sideways. So they've been pushed quite way back and taken some more damage from the wind blast. And the Duke decides to charge into the flank of this regiment, who weren't too fussed about being charged in the flank. They were happy to accept that, and they've survived. The volley gun wavers the enemy artillery, which is nice, but not as good as killing it, of course. So you can see how far back the dwarves are. And I had to be careful to work out that they wouldn't be pushed so far that they would be able to flank charge my regiment there, which they weren't, because they just aren't that fast, so they can't physically reach them. Turn 3 for the dwarves, so the countercharge and the Berserker Lord go into the Duke. So the Berserker Lord is going to be hindered though, and the Duke is now tying up multiple units again. He's not that expensive, but people are terrified of him because he's just a flyer and he's a nuisance. And this is why I like taking the cheaper one, because think about how many points he's been able to hold up so far in this tournament. And he wouldn't have been able to hold up any more by being the more expensive Duke, as far as I'm concerned. So the Bulwarkers, again, just going forward as fast as they can, because they do not want to get wind blasted so far back again that they can't charge. And The Golluck's Fury has stayed back though, and it's going to shoot. It doesn't. So one thing that could have been done here is that Golluck's Fury could have decided not to shoot this turn and actually gone up as fast as he could behind the Bulwarkers to prevent them being wind blasted all the way back again. But he really wants to shoot. So there's a double charge of Rangers onto the Halfling Knights there, so they might get killed by that. It's quite possible. And Golluck's Fury wavers the other volley gun, so artillery getting wavered left and right. 5 damage onto the Duke, doesn't get killed though. Those final positions aren't actually where they are, they just kind of slid off the rock, I think. And the Dark Lord wavers that regiment of Spearlings, which keeps me held up a bit there. And the Knights do get killed by that double charge, which is okay. They did a bit of damage when they went in, I think. Yeah, you can see, I think the orange represents 5 damage and the green is 2, so that unit's taken 7 damage. And they reposition themselves, so they're not going to get flanked by anybody. Turn 4, so the Spearling Horde goes straight in there. They've done some damage. The regiment of Spearlings can't do anything, so there's just breath attacks being fired left and right from the Iron Beasts. And the damage that's done, they kill Dark Lord Dan with breath attack, and all this shooting around here and the wind blast, they push the Bulwarkers all the way back to Golluck's Fury and waver them. So they are not having a good time at all, those Bulwarkers. They've been marching forward into the wind non-stop and just getting shoved back and damaged, and it's not looking good for them at all. They also got a breath attack from my other Iron Beast, I think. So the Duke countercharges into this regiment and a bit more damage on them, but really he's just holding them up. He doesn't expect to actually win that fight. But the way it's looking here, I'm quietly confident at this stage. My horde on the right hasn't taken too much damage yet. They've faced off with multiple units, but the middle is looking quite good. You can see that my regiment of Spearlings there actually charged through the woods into their other dwarf regiment of Rangers there. I believe that's the 3rd Ranger Regiment anyway. We'll find out in a second with a better shot, but they were just sitting there being shot at, really, my Spearlings. They decided why not go in and have a go, and also free up some space for the Iron Beasts to move around a bit. Turn 4. So the Duke is dead, unfortunately. And down here, the Bulwarkers, who passed their headstrong test because they are dwarves, they've now advanced into such a position that surely I can't blast them far enough back again, because the Golluck's Fury has now learned his lesson and moved up as well. And that's how close they are to everything. Very being the answer. So double charge and Heneas and the Battle Driller all into my horde of Spearlings there. So can they survive? Yes. Will they? That's another question. And they become wavered. So that's not too bad. It prevents certain units of mine from doing anything yet. The Honour Guard is still kind of gemmed in. And okay, that wasn't Rangers, that was a unit more likely Iron, I think they're Iron Guard or Ironclad, I can't remember which is better, but they countercharged into my Spearlings and actually killed them in one go, which is not nice. They were damaged though. Turn 5 for Rordia, so what does my gun battery do? Well, they completely annihilate the Bulwarkers, finish them off, and they just had a really bad time today, unfortunately for them. And the Iron Beast gets into the flank position. Alright, so if Golluck's Fury keeps going forwards, the Iron Beast will have a flank charge on it. Then down here. So I double charge the Battle Drill, I'm pretty sure. Yep, it was the Iron Beast and the regiment of Spearlings double charged the Battle Drill, who was kind of side on there. And then the Iron Beast overran into Heneas and did a bit of damage, but not enough to kill him. I was hoping to kill Heneas and overrun him and go into that regiment there as well. Because, of course, the Spearling Horde are wavered, so they couldn't do anything. The Dwarves should actually be a tiny bit further back, but they didn't have any room to bounce because they would have slid off the hill, so that's where they should be. The Honour Guard are just milling around doing nothing, waiting for my horde to die so they can actually fight something. But there's that big gap left in the enemy lines. The Berserker Lord is threatening though, so he'll be able to kill himself a volley gun, probably, should he choose. Turn 5. So instead of going for the volley gun, he decides to go after the Master Sergeant. And this was possibly inspired by the fact that it would have been worth more points if the Master Sergeant died, because that would have also killed the formation, if presumably he finishes off my other Spearling units as well. And up there, Golluck's Fury has given up, I think, on going towards them. He's just going to stay back. And the other volley gun is killed by Mr. Golluck and his Fury. But the Master Sergeant is only wavered by the Berserker Lord, so that's alright. And the Horde does go down this time from the double charge of the Rangers, and I think Heneus probably helped out again as well. So that's where they end up. So they are going to get crunched very shortly, because as you can see, there's Honor Guard right there. There's an Iron Beast who possibly has a flank on that unit, so they are going to get munched to death. Turn 6 for Rordia. So the Wind Blast pushes Golluck's Fury all the way back nearly to his own table edge. So this is just almost comical at this stage, the effectiveness of the Wind Blast in this game. And the Honor Guard, of course, kill those Rangers. And, of course, the Iron Beast and that regiment, who could just see them as well, double charged in the flank, killed the other Rangers. And this Iron Beast is just chilling out there. So there aren't too many Dwarves left. But you can see there's some measuring going on there. Heneus is still alive, Golluck's Fury and the Berserker Lord are still alive. And there is a turn 7. So it was a very, very short turn 6 for the Dwarves, because there wasn't much they could do. I think he actually wavers the Master Sergeant again. So on the next turn, all that can be done really is the Iron Beast kills Heneus, and not much else is going on. Everyone turns around to shoot at the Berserker Lord, but I don't manage to kill him. Turn 7 for the Dwarves. The Berserker Lord charges into the Master Sergeant again. I think I wind blasted him away a little bit, but not enough. And Golluck's Fury manages to kill off, or finish off, the regiment of Spearlings. And then, does the Master Sergeant get killed? He does, in fact. So that means that he does get the extra points for the formation. So I don't know whether that tipped him over the edge to get any extra tournament points, but it was a very decisive kill victory for the League of Rordia there. Haven't lost much at all, mainly just lost Spearlings, whereas the enemy have lost everything apart from 3 models, or 2 models in fact. Oh no, it is 3, because there's the artillery piece which didn't die either. So very big win there for the League of Rordia. So now 2 wins and a loss from day 1, and 2 tasty wins. So going on to day 2 and game 4. So this is going to be quite a long video, I think. Game 4 then. You can see there is a drink on the table, which on these battle mats isn't terribly bad etiquette, because they're not particularly absorbent. They repel liquid. Most of the kind of mouse mat material battle mats I've used do repel liquid quite nicely. So it's only, the spillage is only really a problem if it also lands on someone's models, for the most part. And I'm against Orcs. Now, before the tournament I had certain armies in mind that would have been a nightmare for what I'm bringing, and Orcs with a lot of unit strength and lots of nerve and lots of killy ability were one of those things, because my army is much more absorbent than it is potentially murderous. So I would rather not face things that just have massed amounts of nerve and can also murder you when they counter you. And combine that with an army that also significantly outspeeds me due to having flyers, then that is kind of a double no-no. So the scenario here is what is the name of it? It's Raise, I think. So you have 3 objectives that you place on your opponent's half of the table, and you must control them, and then they kind of just vanish, and you get the victory point for them once you control them. You can't get the ones on your own half, and then the one in the centre is just there at the end to be held. So let's see what the enemy have. They have a winged slasher, they have some allies, and I think they are tortured souls. Pretty sure that's what they are, but they're represented by flying pigs there. There are some pig cavalry, 2 lots there. Then there's some big blocks of orcs. The big horde, I think, is Morax, and the 2 regiments are Gretax. I believe that is correct. Behind them there's Wardrum. There is, I think there's Gakamak in there, possibly. There are some Orclings at the front. And there's a couple of mounted heroes, I think. And over on this side, there is just his Colossal Nick. So a bit more robotic than my Colossal Nick, definitely. So my plan here is, I mean, look at that wall of meat. There is no way I'm going to compete with that in a fight. There's no way I'm going to even outshoot that because of all this speed, really. He's definitely got the ability to get into my gun line. And what I want to do then is hold up this blob as long as possible and sneak round and collect objectives. So to that end, I've got my knights and my duke positioned out here on this flank, only opposite the enemy Nick, who I'm hoping can just fly around, swoop up the objectives and take out Nick. And hopefully the rest of the enemy are too busy fighting to think about that. So we'll see if that works. The Honour Guard are in the centre, so at the end of the game then, I will want my hard-hitting units to be alive in the middle to kill things, because I want to be controlling that central objective. So I'm overlooking that with my archers, and I've got my Honour Guard there. So that's the plan there. Over on this side, I've got my 2 volley guns, who are hoping to just kill anything that lands in range of them in the first turn, and then whatever they don't kill is going to kill them. And then I've got all my spearlings over there around the woods to make it even more difficult to kill them all. And my spearling horde are in a position where they can pivot out of the woods and not be charged by units that are to the left of the woods. And I've got my iron beasts there as well. Apparently it was 2 axe regiments and a great axe horde. Okay, there we go. We've had confirmation from the man himself in the chat there. And you can see the iron beasts there. Really, it's providing support and also the ability to spin round and head over to the left if they need to give some breath attack support. I've got 1 lot of wind blast over there with Nick, and the other one, I don't want to overcommit to the left because I know it's going to get crunched. I just want enough there to hold them up for a couple of turns while I'm scooping up objectives and kind of realigning in the middle to the right of the enemy block. So there's all the objectives. And turn 1. So the Orcs immediately send over a character to help out Nick because maybe they're sensing what my battle plan's going to be there. And this big giant blob, the flyer isn't actually at the back there, it's actually where that base is on the left, but my opponent was rightly concerned that someone could just walk past and catch the wing on their clothing and drag it onto the floor, which is something I haven't experienced myself, but I have been aware of it happening to people over the years. I've got a couple of models where I would be terrified of that happening. I've got, if you've seen my undead army, my flying, very heavy metal creature, like the big bone creature, that is very fragile, so I imagine that would get utterly destroyed if someone dragged that onto the floor. And actually, when I was at Warhammer World, I accidentally dragged one of my own Stormcast Eternals onto the floor and almost stepped on it, so that could have been fatal. But you can see that big blob there. It's a nice counter to the wind blast, because they're all kind of parked behind each other. Or the flyers, anyway. There's no point in me trying to wind blast the tortured souls for purposes of pushing them, it would only be for damage. And you can see both the Orc heroes think that maybe I've got something up my sleeve over on this flank, so they're not necessarily falling for that ploy. And the big blob in the middle, of course, is just walking forward like a big wall of death, as you would expect. So turn 1 for Audia, and I've got both these units straight into range, just pushing them up as fast as I can, and I've got the Duke in such a position so that I could fly straight to that objective. But the Knights are there as well, because I need to get this done fast before those individuals both get here. So they're out of range. I believe the mounted one is Gakamak, so I don't want to get charged by him straight away. So I want to get this over and done with, get that objective, and fly away before he kills everything. The Honour Guard just chilling out a bit. Like I said, I'm saving them for later. Everything else just positions itself a little bit forward, because what I would have loved to do in this scenario is just hug the back of the table and just shoot away and put things behind my shooter units so that anything that charges them then gets countered. But you can't really afford to do that in this scenario, because the enemy will then just move forward at some point during the game, pick up all their objectives, and then I'll be stuck against my own table edge and have not claimed any points for myself. So you just lose. May end up killing more than the enemy, possibly, but you'd definitely lose the scenario, so that's not really an option here. If it was the kill, I would be seriously tempted to try something like that, I think. But we'll see how it goes. So the volley guns, what do? Well, they get rid of the tortured souls there, which is one lot of flyers dead, but there's still the big slasher there. Not the ancient slasher, it's just a regular one, so I can't really call it the big slasher anymore. Then there is a hero there as well, who I had a bit of a go at with shooting, but couldn't kill that. The archers put some damage onto the Orclings, just trying to get rid of that screen, so I can start killing the more important units. Turn 2, so double cavalry charge into one of the regiments of spearlings, which is by no means guaranteed to kill them, but it's certainly likely, even with the ensnare and the phalanx. Orc cavalry hits sufficiently hard that a double charge should probably kill a regiment. And the rest of that blob working their way up. The other one hanging back a bit because the honour guard are in town. And you can see here that that hero charges into my duke. And Nick doesn't want to charge away. Presumably he wants to stay on that objective to stop me claiming it with only the duke, which is a good move. So he's staying within 3 inches of it, pushing the knights back a bit, but I don't know if he actually does any damage to them with his wind blast. So the volley guns are dead. They got charged by the slasher and by that mounted hero there. So that was kind of expected. But like I said, I am prepared for this eventuality. I'm just hoping that the right flank goes well so that I can then start moving on to phase 2 of the plan. And the regiment of spearlings dies. Again, expected there. Turn 2 for Rordia. So, a double charge on Colossal Nick, because if I could kill him, then the Duke would then be in range to hold that objective there and raise it and get me a victory point. But unfortunately, with all their combined might, they're only able to do what looks like 2 damage to him, which is incredibly disappointing. The Duke did not do very well with his attacks at all there. Even the Duke on his own should probably do more than that. And here, so Colossal Nick charges into some of the cavalry, which is only to prevent them from flank charging anybody and just hold them up. And the spearlings, they're just positioning themselves so that when they get charged, it'll be a hindered charge. The Iron Beast has gone into the woods, ready to help out with his breath attack, and also if anyone wants to charge the Iron Beast from over there, it would be hindered into a defense 6 unit, which no one really likes doing. And I've got my spearlings lined up perfectly with each other so they're not allowing any flank charges into the horde. And the other Iron Beast is behind the woods, so he can't be seen by anybody. So down here, my shooting, what does it do? Well, we kill off one of the little Orcling regiments, but the other one's on 5 damage, so slowly getting through them, but that big blob of Orcs isn't getting thinner. The Honour Guard have moved up into a very threatening position, so are the enemy going to continue advancing with them in town? We shall see. So there's how it's looking. So the plan is only somewhat working at this stage, because that flank is collapsing, as expected, but the woods are helping me, and that should help me last longer. I just need the right flank to go well more rapidly than it currently is, and the Honour Guard are still in position to threaten when that big blob of meat wanders into the middle of the table towards my lines. So whenever you make a plan like this that relies on your own units being killed and winning the scenario, things generally have to go right. If they don't, then all that happens is your army got killed, and it's very difficult to then come back and win if everything's dead, if you have to change your tactic midway through the game. So, Gakamat gets in there, goes into the knights. I would expect to survive 1 round against him, because he hits like a beast, but he only has about 7 attacks, I think. So, I would hope, anyway, to survive 1 round against him. The Duke gets charged by Nick and by the other mounted hero, but I wouldn't expect that to be enough to take out a Duke. So, a double charge. There is some cavalry and one of the big axe regiments there goes into a single regiment of spearlings, so they are going to be hindered because you can see the terrains right there, and the other cavalry go into Colossal Nick, assisted by that mounted hero there. So we'll see if they manage to crumble. Also, the Orclings go into this horde, which is possibly to protect the flank of their own horde after they possibly bounce off. So also, the big flyer lands right in the middle of my lines, which means I'm going to have to start turning things a bit. It lands close enough to the crabby iron beast that I won't be able to turn it round and breath attack it, which, if it was intentional, is obviously a good way to do it, because the shape of the iron beast is quite limiting. If it was square, you could just turn around willy-nilly, but alas. Then the Orcs have positioned themselves, because that horde couldn't get in to fight anyone yet because they're so big, but they are positioning themselves in such a way that the Honour Guard are threatened, whatever they do now. So the Honour Guard would be taking a risk if they make a charge now. The Duke takes a bit of damage, the Knights take a bit of damage, but they'll be fine. The Orclings do damage. The Spearlings take a bit of damage, but not much, so they'll be okay. And Colossal Nick gets wavered, which is fine as well, because this entire flank just needs to survive, really. I'm not expecting them to win. And there's how it's looking. So that flyer is posing a little bit of a problem with the positioning of my Iron Beast there. And over here, I've got a choice to make with the Honour Guard. Who do I charge? Do I charge the Horde or the Regiment? The Horde, if I rolled really well, I could definitely kill them in one go, but I would have to roll well, and if I fail, I would be getting flank charged and counter charged at the same time. I'm much more likely to kill the Regiment, so there's less risk involved in that one. And over here, I'm going to be doing double counter charge there, because I still just need to counter charge and kill Nick, and then raise that objective. Turn 3. So again, there's that counter charge, double. The Honour Guard decide to play it safe and take out the Regiment, and then turn so no one can flank them, so they may well take a double charge. They'll either take just the Horde, or the Horde and the Flyer, if he chooses not to charge anyone else. My Regiment, or my Horde, and my Regiment together counter-charge the Regiment of Axe, I think they are. And you'll see that the Orclings have been killed. That is because all my shooting from this area targets them. And over here, Colossal Nick with his Headstrong managed to shrug off being wavered but didn't achieve much. And that unit of Orcs there have taken a bit of damage now. I turned round the Iron Beast, the Barrel Beastie there, and got other shooting attacks looking in that direction, but after I turned my archers round and started the shooting, I then remembered, actually, that my crabby Iron Beast is height 4. It's because I've been using it as a battle shrine, so I keep thinking of it as height 3. So those archers pointlessly turned round. Luckily they were still able to help out shooting the Orclings. They could still see them, so it wasn't a total waste, but obviously turning round limits the effectiveness of their shooting, and they could have been shooting into that horde, getting them whittled down ready for later, and now they're going to have to turn around again and be even worse at shooting for another turn. So I don't do much to the big flyer, so he's got a choice of maybe rear charging the Spearling horde, or potentially joining in to try and take out the Honour Guard as well. And in fact, Mr. Matt himself in the chat there says, Horde is 24-26 due to Drum and Brew of Courage. You would have needed an incredible roll to do it. Yes, so the Honour Guard probably wise not to even try charging in there, because they would have undoubtedly been flanked by the other unit. So over here, the Duke again rolls terribly and does not kill Nick, which is very disappointing because now time is really running out for him to do that. And the plan to get the early jump on that objective and then start hopping around to other objectives is completely out the window by this point. So it reminds me very much of kind of the way Star Wars films often come down to a big battle going on, and the outnumbered forces are just trying to hang on while someone else does something that's really crucial, like bring down the shields and what have you, like on the enemy base. I feel like that's what the Duke is doing here. He's just running around trying to do a crucial objective that's constantly meeting these roadblocks, i.e. him not doing very well in combat, while everyone else is struggling to hang on in a battle that I kind of know they're going to lose. So there's charging going on for the Orcs now. They're going back in there. And those knights are going to die now, so the Duke at best will have one more turn to get that objective. The double charge from the flyer and the horde onto the honor guards, they are quite likely to die at this point. Nick gets charged again, and everything else piles into... I think they pile into the regiment of spearlings rather than the horde. They feel more confident in killing that, and that will also mean that they have more unit strength on top of the raise marker that's in the middle of this fight, so they'll be able to claim it this turn. And they do so there's a victory point there. Gekamak does kill the knights, as expected. The Duke doesn't die, so he's alright. And the horde and the slasher kill the honor guard, so that's not looking too healthy. However, this does look quite healthy. In turn 4 for League of Rordia, the Iron Beast charges out into the slasher and kills him, which is nice. He performed very well there. I think that makes up for, well, not in scenario terms because he's not getting any points for it, but it almost makes up for the Duke not doing very well on the other side. The horde of spearlings managed to kill the regiment that were there, and you can see that the Iron Beast overran, which is going to prevent that Orc horde from charging into the flank of my horde, I'm pretty sure. And the Iron Beast is just sitting in the woods, just breath attacking people. This whole side really is pointless, because I think the enemy have already claimed 2 of the raise tokens over here, and the other one's quite far away, so there's nothing really to fight for on this side other than kill points. And of course the Duke didn't manage to kill Nick, ever, so he ends up getting flank charged by Gekamak, and he's going to die probably now, because he's got lots of people attacking him at once, and he's going to be toast. The Iron Beast gets attacked by the horde, and takes some damage, but doesn't die, because it's quite beastly like that. And the Duke is dead, so I now have no one to go after and claim objectives, so I'm definitely not going to win at this point. The only way I could possibly get a draw is if I can get one of the objectives from the back. I've still got the Iron Beast, who's maybe capable of that if I get another turn, I think, and I would have to kill that horde in the middle and hold the objective there as well to possibly get a draw at this point. Turn 5. So this Iron Beast continues to do well and actually wavers that horde. So he's obviously the crab of the match for me at this stage. Although he did inadvertently block the archers from shooting, so I'm not sure if he's just making up for that now. And the Spearling horde here, they're just chilling out. Did they kill anything there? I can't remember what was in front of them. I think they just went after him, and see, he's gone up to 4 damage. That may have just been with breath attack. I can't remember if the Spearlings actually attacked him. They may well have done, but they're not leaving the woods. And you can see kind of surrounded, but it's actually improved the situation a little bit in the last couple of minutes because of that Iron Beast's performance. And I've moved up the archers because the only way I have of possibly winning this game now is to get the Iron Beast up there to the top and to get to that objective that you can see in the centre at the top of the screen there. So that's the only chance I have to get a draw at this point. So turn 6, and I probably needed to kill them last turn to have a decent chance at getting a draw. So a charge into the Spearlings and prevented from becoming hindered by the individual, which is obviously a very nice technique which I enjoy employing, especially with goblins when they have the really fast mounted heroes that can run around and do that willy-nilly. The other cavalry just move around behind the woods. Again, that side is totally pointless now, it's all about what happens here. So this orc wizard just plops himself down in front of that horde to stop the archers joining in with the combat, because the only way I could get a draw would be if I were to possibly double charge that horde, kill it, overrun with the Iron Beast, get close to the objective so in turn 7 I could jump on it, and the archers stay in the middle and don't die and hold that central objective. So it's still not totally dead, it's just looking not very good, unfortunately. So what's going on here? The Colossal Nick for the Orcs is walking towards that objective down there, which he can claim because he's not individual or anything. So I need to get rid of him. and Gekamak and the other hero that dispatched my Duke are now heading down to help out down here as well, so it's not looking healthy. The Horde are fine, as you would expect. And that is the end of the game, so there's not a turn 7. So I was not able to pull off that last-minute plan that may have worked if I was very lucky, but alas, it's a loss. I think overall the plan wasn't the worst, the one I concocted. If anyone can think of anything that I should have done differently there, or that would have been a better option for an overall battle plan, let me know in the chat, because this list that I've constructed here, they do tend to struggle to dish out big amounts of damage to just the big, juicy, really tough units that can also hit back. So I've struggled against things like Ogres and Orcs now. Struggled to kill lots of units, basically. So my list isn't mobile enough, it's really slow and doesn't necessarily dish out that much damage unless the enemy are slow enough not to get to my shooting. As you found out in that previous game against the Dwarves, where I was able to just mercilessly gun down their really slow units as they walked towards me. That's kind of the dream matchup, just really slow enemies. But this was obviously quite a tough matchup, the list, and I think it could have gone worse, definitely, but it also could have gone a lot better. The fact that it was still kind of up for grabs at the end says that even when you feel you're outmatched, if you keep just tweaking and trying to look for ways that you can weasel the scenario, there is usually a way you can get something out of a game, even when it looks like a lost cause. You just have to keep trying, and you can't give up at all, basically. It's like if you're playing a game of tennis, and you know for a fact that you're horribly out of position, just keep hitting the ball back anyway, because your opponent might make a mistake. You could get lucky. So that's the way I look at it. Just keep going, make your opponent keep rolling dice, and something could fall for you at the end if you just keep tinkering with your battle plan and trying to come up with something new. Just keep going, basically. Never give up. And here are some of the living legends that were out on display. And these are all the Juggernaut Johns. I think the one at the back in the Taekwondo robe won, a worthy winner there, because that was very nice. I do like the hippo down at the front as well. That's a nice one. There are all the colossal Nicks, and the one that won is the one that obviously stands out because of the paint style at the back there, which is, if you've ever seen any of his stuff on Facebook, or you've probably seen it in some of my tournament reports as well, I've played him a couple of times, his dwarf army is very, very nice, stands out. It's definitely, I would say, the best medium distance army in terms of visuals that I've ever seen for Kings of War. It's because the style is very striking. He's got these big bold outlines and very bold colours as well. So from a medium distance, probably the best looking army in the Kings of War community that I have seen. When you get really close, there are certain armies where you'll find out that someone's got like the perfect veins on the eyeball painted, but obviously you won't notice that from across the table. So I'm not saying people waste their time by doing that, but from a distance, more than a few inches, you're not really going to notice all the amazing work that goes into them. But if you want a really good example of a medium distance, almost the perfect army, you should look at that dwarf army that the top left Nick there was created for. You can see mine just in the middle of the pack there. I was hoping actually that his Nick would win the overall Best Living Legend award, which would have meant that he was no longer eligible for the Best Nick award. And looking at the others, some of the others are nicely painted, but I think in terms of comedy and theme, I think mine would have been in with a chance at the Best Nick award if the other one had been elevated to the Best Overall winner. I like the kind of the fat guy with the wheel on his belly there. That's quite a fun one. And here are the Dans. There are only two because his stat line was deemed to be inferior to the others, I think. And the one on the right won. There's not a lot of competition in this category, obviously, only two. But still. And then these were the Pauls. You can see obviously very, very big. The one that's like an ogre standing in a pipe with another ogre sticking out the top was the one that won this particular award. The furthest one from the camera, carrying kind of an inn or a tavern on top of it, I think was the best one, but I don't think that was eligible because it wasn't painted by the person that was using it. Did that one win? Yeah, and the overall winner, in fact, was the pig in the background there. So it's not a very good picture because it's kind of blocked by the other one, but that one won the overall, and then the extended ogre there won the best pole. So there you go. I mean, okay, here's a good picture of this. Look at that. Very, very nice. Nice creativity, which is always nice to see. Now we're on to the final game. And there are only 2 League of Rordia players at this event, and we've both come up against each other now in the final round. So, this scenario is control. So obviously, the 6 boxes, 2 foot by 2 foot, and you want to try and control as many of them as possible with superior unit strength for a victory point, and then the one opposite you in the middle, your opponent's central square, is worth 2 victory points to you. So, this is an interesting matchup. My army has significantly more halflings because the League of Rordia list does feature a lot of humans as well. I actually think halflings should be a totally separate army, but that's an issue for another day. So let's see what is up here. So there are honor guard, so it's honor guard on honor guard in this game. There are 2 hordes of dogs of war, you can see one of them there, next to an iron beast. Then there are some household knights, which are the human knights of the League of Rordia, which are superior to the halfling knights, but they're not nimble. And on the other side, I don't think I got a full army shot here because I wanted to get these pictures taken quickly. I think we were maybe a bit behind on time at the start. There is a unit of halfling knights, just a regiment in the top left, another iron beast, so 2 iron beasts per side. There is that is the big Paul, I think, and his deal, is that he is very slow, a very slow giant, and when you want to do anything with him, he might randomly be only speed 3 for that turn. I think that's how it works. Then there is a musket block next to them, some more dogs of war in the woods, and there is an ancient winged arrowles there next to them, so bigger than my arrowles. So on my right flank I've got Nick, I've got the 2 regiments of spearlings, I've got all my cavalry, and I've got an iron beast. So, in this scenario, you really kind of have to spread out your unit strength a bit. You don't want it all being stuck on one side of the table and you having nothing to claim on the other side with. In the middle I've got most of my shooting, I've got the archers, I've got the volley gun there, and I've got spearling horde and iron beast. And then over on... hold on, where are we? Because I didn't take all these pictures necessarily in the right order. So I think this is definitely on my right flank. And this might be the left flank actually here, and in the middle we've got a volley gun on a hill with the Duke behind it. There's a big piece of impassable terrain in front of the volley gun, but it can see on both sides of it, so that's why it's there. It's to threaten both sides. So there's my opponent's army. Got some better shots here of them moving up. I think these are the pictures prior to the game. And there's a nice mask on the big Paul. Very slow giant. So turn 1, and I've got turn 1 here. I've pushed up my spearlings. One of the spearling units is going to be in range of his household knights, I think, at this stage, but I'm fine with that because if he wants to charge into an ensnaring regiment, that's fine by me. And my cavalry is staying out of range of everything. And really, there's a bit of a choke point there between that house, where that enemy hand is perched. That's a bit of a choke point there, which I'm trying to block up with my regiment of spearlings, because there's a big piece of impassable terrain slightly to the left of the shot here. And over on this side there's going to be less movement because that's where most of my shooting is, and the archers and the master sergeant shoot at the musket block, and they put a bit of damage on it. And what I was saying earlier in a previous game about turning my artillery slightly so it could clip the corner of an enemy unit without being in range itself, I've also done in this game against the musket block. So I've tilted the volley gun, since it can't shoot yet, I've turned it a little bit, so I'll be able to shoot those guys, but they won't be able to shoot back at the volley gun. So it's difficult to pull off, and it depends on the base size of the units involved. So turn 1 for the enemy Rordians, and the household knights do decide to go in for the charge on the spearling regiment, which, if they want to get through there, they would have had to do at some point. So I'm confident they'll survive though, because they're inspired, ensnaring, phalanx, they'll probably live through that. The Honor Guard and the Dogs of War, this is really nasty block here. Honor Guard, Dogs of War and an Iron Beast, that's going to be tough to take down, but they're quite jammed in there, there's not a lot of space to manoeuvre. The Ancient Duke is hiding behind the impassable terrain there, so it can't be shot by volley guns, which is wise. And over on this side, the Halfling Knights are at the front with everything else just chilling out around them. The Iron Beast and Big Paul the Giant are not very fast, so with my Wind Blast on this side, I'm fairly confident I can nudge them back and shoot them to bits, hopefully. And the muskets have the reload rules, they can't move and shoot, so we'll see if they manage to get into the game much. I think I left my archers in range of them. I'm not worried about his muskets shooting at my stealthy archer horde. I would rather him do that than get in range to shoot at something more fragile. So the Iron Beast uses a breath attack to put some damage onto my other Spearling regiment, which is okay because my Spearling regiments here are really just a delivery system for my better units. His knights are faster than my knights for a start, so I need something to block the way. Only 3 damage on them, so they'll be fine, but there isn't enough space there. We actually worked out whether there would be enough space for me to double charge that unit with my knights and the Spearlings if he bounced off an inch, and we determined that there wouldn't be enough space. So that's why he went in for the charge. Mr. Underdog in the chat there, hello. If anyone else is watching this right now, feel free to comment away. On to the last game now. So they bounce off, and turn 2 for me. So, shooting wise, well, the Halfling Knights are dead. His Halfling Knights. It was only a small unit of them that I managed to shoot down. And I'm pushing forward my Spearling Horde and the Iron Beast there in the middle. My Spearling regiment go back into that combat there. And I actually totally forget to move my Duke here. But it doesn't work out badly at all if you wait and see, because I was actually going to move him forward somewhere so that he couldn't be attacked by anybody, so there wouldn't be any space for anything to attack him. But unfortunately I just totally forgot to move him because I was too busy rearranging everything else. You can see like my Iron Beast has turned round, the Knights are repositioning themselves, and the Spearlings there. I just totally forgot about the Duke completely. So turn 2 for the enemy Rordians, and as you can see his Ancient Duke spots that he could actually see the flank of my regular Duke, which is something I didn't intend for him to do, but when I was looking at the layout of the units, I thought, actually, that's not bad. I'm quite happy that he's taken that move, because you'll see why momentarily. So over on this side, the Iron Beast and Big Paul are marching towards my shooting. His Honor Guard are in range of Colossal Nick. They're hindered, but they should probably still have a good chance of killing him, and his Iron Beast goes into my Spearling regiment, which I would hope wouldn't be enough to kill them yet. But it might, you never know. Probably not though, because of course it hits on 5s anyway, and then the Ensnare as well should be enough to stop them being killed, and his Dogs of War are just chilling out behind. But the layout of these units here, you'll see in a minute, gives me a really good opportunity. So his shooting down there, what does he do? Well, it puts some damage onto my archers. I'll accept that. He puts more damage onto my Spearling unit here, 8 damage, but he can't even wave at them with his knights, which is bad. The Ancient Duke does kill my Duke, and then he moves forward 3 inches to get out of the Honor Guard's arc. But it's not going to be enough to help him because, well, this is somewhat expected. The Iron Beast manages to waver my unit there, my Spearlings. King John says, absorb his halflings into the fold. Yes, any halflings that died in this battle will undoubtedly be raised as undead halflings later to fight for the evil Rordia. Colossal Nick drops at the hands of the Honor Guard, but I'm not concerned about that because it opens things up a bit. Now you can see this situation here. If anyone can see exactly what I'm going to do now, then feel free to pause the video and drop it in the comments and see if you were correct. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move my nimble knights forwards towards that house and get them out of the way. Then the Iron Beast Crab is going to charge into the flank of the Ancient Duke, which you can see he can easily do with just a single pivot there, which then clears the way for the Honor Guard to charge into his Honor Guard, which will be a hindered charge, but I'm quite happy to go for that and get the first hit in on them and maybe even waver or kill them in one go. So it's opened up quite nicely there. Turn 3. So, well, the Iron Beast charges into the Ancient Duke and kills it in one go. So the Iron Beast does well. The volley gun shoots over the top of all this into his Iron Beast, which was in front of my wavered spearlings, and puts a bit of damage on it. My Honour Guard kill his Honour Guard, despite being hindered. I got some good rolling there, managed to kill them. And my spearlings, which had been charged a couple of times by his Household Knights, actually managed to kill them, which is quite amusing. So I got a good nerve roll there, and they weren't inspired, so that's how that happened. So it's suddenly opened up a bit, and I've just taken out 3 units in one go there. So that side is looking very healthy. And over on this side, I've turned my Iron Beast round because I need something to threaten the flank of Big Paul and his Iron Beast as it approaches my gun line, and my spearlings there are just marching up. Because my plan at this stage, since this unit survived, I can now use them to march forward into the enemy's central section of the board, and if I can get my horde there on the right to get in there as well, that means that his horde of Dogs of War in there won't be enough to stop me from claiming it. I'll have more unit strength in there. So you can see I've wind blasted those units back again, so they're probably not going to be able to charge, or I think I wind blast one of them to stop it charging. I think that was Paul, because I wasn't able to push one of them out of range, something like that. Or Paul wasn't in range anyway, so I decided to push the Iron Beast. But I'm not sure whether I actually successfully got it out of range or not. So there's how it's looking there now. His Iron Beast is probably going to finish off my Spearling unit next time, and my Knights are kind of stuck, but they had to get in that position to allow me to pull off that multiple charge manoeuvre. Turn 3 for the enemy Rordians. So the Iron Beast was still in range, so made it into the archers, but Big Paul couldn't get into range to charge. And the Iron Beast goes back into my spearlings there, probably going to kill them now. And his muskets put some damage onto my Iron Beast, so making a start on them. So that spearling unit is dead. The Iron Beast killed them. Turn 4 for me. So my Iron Beast charged into the flank of his Iron Beast, but despite being in the flank, only does 6 damage, which is very disappointing there. So that cancels out the excellent rolls I had before with my other Iron Beast. So this crab is really doing better than the giant barrel monster here. However, his Iron Beast over here goes down because my crabby Iron Beast and the Honour Guard charge into that and kill it. So they're going to be attacked by Dogs of War, but it can't attack, that unit of his can't attack both of them, of course, so I'm going to have something left to fight with. And if he chooses to go for the Honour Guard and doesn't kill them, he's then going to get flanked by the Iron Beast probably, which is the nightmare scenario if you are the Dogs of War, because of course you're not going to get your ensnare. Okay, Master Sergeant, what does he do? Well, he's chipping away on the musket block, and if they don't take him down, eventually he'll probably kill them, because he is quite proficient with his elite. Turn 4 for the enemy Rordians. Now, you can see the Honour Guard are split in half here, but that's just because they wouldn't balance on the wall without kind of headbutting each other's tails, and because they're metal, I would rather they didn't do that. But you can tell where they're supposed to be. So Dogs of War in there, we'll see how that goes. And Big Paul goes into the archers, and his Iron Beast countercharges my Iron Beast. The muskets have moved up because, remembering this is of course the control scenario, he might need some unit strength around the place, so they're moving. His Iron Beast puts plenty of damage on mine, 6 by the looks of it, getting him up to 10, but cannot waver it. His nerve rolls aren't very good so far in this game, and mine have been slightly above average, definitely. Paul kills the archers though. And the Dogs of War only do 3 damage to the Honour Guard. That is incredibly poor. I would expect them to do definitely more than that. Very, very poor indeed. Turn 5 for me. So my Iron Beast got away without becoming wavered or killed by his Iron Beast, so I'm then able to countercharge and kill it. But I do then get countercharged, or flank charged should I say, by the muskets in the next turn. I'm rushing to the pictures a bit here. I wasn't pausing it to take pictures, I was just taking it as we were playing because I didn't want to fall behind on time or anything. and you can see that Big Paul is going to go after my sorcerer in his turn as well. But I do manage to kill his Dogs of War, though, as you can see over there, because the Honour Guard in the front, the Iron Beast in the flank, the Knights, my Knights were able to get into the flank as well. They weren't able to do anything last turn because they had to back away from the house a little bit because they were right up to it and touching it, so I just had to move them backwards. But then this turn they were able to get the flank of the Dogs of War with the Iron Beast, and those Dogs of War just splat. And you can see my regiment of Spearlings there are just moving into position to claim that middle spot of enemy territory along with my Horde, who are staying out of charge range of his other Dogs of War unit. I'm just chilling, just waiting right on the edge of the territory to jump in there, so at most I'll have to face maybe 1 or 2 turns of combat from them. But at this stage it's not going to be many chances for him to kill them at all. And you can see I've sent the Knights facing backwards now, so they're going to head off back into the middle to make sure he doesn't claim my central section, and the Crab Iron Beast is just going to stay down here and claim that corner. So you can see how far I'm staying away from his Dogs of War there. If they want to come out and fight, then fine, but if they want to stay there, then I'll just be able to claim their middle section by virtue of superior numbers, because I've got my regiment coming in as well. Then his muskets do kill my Iron Beast there with a flank charge, so that's nice for them. And Paul only wavers the sorcerer, which is disappointing because he could have overrun into my volley gun there. His nerve rolls have not been good at all. Turn 6 for me, so just spreading out all my units around the place to claim more territory. And the Knights have gone into my middle section. The volley gun there, and the Master Sergeant delete, I think it's the... Is it the musket block they delete? I think it is, yeah. So the musket block is dead, and Paul takes some damage here from shooting as well. I think the Master Sergeant shoots him. But I don't kill him. He's up to 8. Turn 6 for the enemy Rordians, and he just positions himself so he can't get flank charged by anyone, I think. But that's not going to help him because I'm still going to be able to claim that area. And look at that. He charges into the sorcerer again, puts more damage on. We didn't even mark it because he was going to kill it so horribly, and then he double wand it. Wow, wow, wow. And he'd already used his reroll at this point. There was a tournament reroll, by the way. And I think that was the end of the game. I don't think we got turn 7. So that's how it's going to end. So the Honour Guard are holding a section, so there's 1 for me. The Crab Iron Beast is holding a section, that's 2 for me. The Knights are holding my middle one, that's 3. This enemy middle one, I've got an advantage of 5 points to 3. So that's going to be 2 for me. And this section over here is claimed by Big Paul for the enemy, so it's a fairly clear win for the League of Rordia. Obviously my League of Rordia, not the enemy League of Rordia, which didn't have as many halflings as me, so obviously my side was the rightful League of Rordia in this situation. More halflings the better, and that is the final image from the tournament. So there were 40 players at this event, so quite a hefty 2-day one, and I managed to finish 14th. So people, of course, are bumped around a bit with their scores for sportsmanship and hobby. I think I actually finished roughly the same I would have finished regardless. I don't think my hobby score bumped me up particularly. There were a couple of people that made big jumps because the spot they were in was tightly packed in the table, or maybe they were competing in the table with people who got low hobby or sports scores, so they were able to jump ahead of them. But in the spot I was in the table, there wasn't that much jumping around based on all that. But I've got 14th anyway, which is quite tasty. Above middle, which is fine for League of Rordia. I don't think my list is particularly optimal. And again, for this tournament, I was mainly focused on taking what I thought looked really good. So, King John says, do you like your halfling list or undead list better? I'm not even sure I have an undead list at the moment. Because I haven't played them for a while. I haven't played them since maybe the last Clash of Kings book, so I wouldn't really have something I would call my undead list. The closest thing would be what I used to take at the tournaments, which was Soul Reaver Cavalry and Zombie Legions up to the eyeballs and Revenant King on Worm, which I thought was tasty. I can make an undead list out of my Rordian models, my undead halflings, but what I'm thinking of doing, because halfling knights are so mediocre, and generally poor and don't really do anything particularly well and seem like a bit of a waste. They're not fast enough to be annoying kind of light cavalry, and they don't hit hard enough to be heavy cavalry. They don't have the defense of cavalry that you would expect to have for heavy cavalry. So I'm saying cavalry a lot here. They're not good enough. So I'm thinking of ditching them, but I've got the models, so what could I possibly use them as? Could I switch them into Raudian household knights, which are slightly better? Maybe. But what I'm thinking of trying, and I'm going to try in an upcoming game or two, I'm going to try bringing them in as allies as undead knights, most likely Soul Reaver knights. We'll see if I can put a list together that features them, because that would cure the problem of the League of Raudian not having enough killing power, because I've got the Honour Guard that can kill, I've got the Volley Guns that can kill. Having another unit in there that's equally as dangerous as the Honour Guard, if not more so, because they're faster, they have higher defence, the only thing they lack is slightly less attacks. But Defence 6 knights that are faster than all my actual halfling knights that I have available, I think would be pretty tasty. The only downside is I wouldn't be able to then afford a decent character to inspire them, because they're so expensive it would go above the allies' limits if I wanted to take anything decent. So I would very much like to give them a try at some point, so you'll see how that goes in battle reports before I even think about taking it to a tournament. There's also the possibility of just using the whole list as undead at some point, but I'm not going to go for that for a while. I want to stick with Raudia for now. I don't like the idea of playing an army a few times, finding that it's not that great, and then just ditching it for something else. I want to stick with it, tweak it, and get it to a point where I feel like I can do a good job with it. But mainly this army, I just think it looks really cool, and it's unique. There is nobody out there in the world with an army even remotely like mine that I know of. So until there are more people with undead halfling armies, I can still be proud of that fact alone. Obviously I didn't win any of the awards. The best painted award, or the best army award, went to the wonderful display board and army that I showed you partway through, which was very, very nice and expected. However, there was one thing actually. In the tournament pack, it stated that there would be a player's vote to decide the best army award, which excited me a little bit, because I thought, technically, I don't even need to be the best painter to win that. Because what tends to happen is that certain players will vote for technically the best paint job. They'll just go around and run over it with a fine-tooth comb and see what is the best army in terms of technical skill and mastery of the brush and the paints and technique. And there is a certain percentage of players who will vote for something that just looks cool at a mid-distance, and certain players who will vote for something that they think is unique and fun and interesting, or even funny. So potentially, if it was a player's vote that decided the best army, the technical genius of the top 4 or 5 players, they could have actually split the vote of the people that vote for that kind of thing, and then if there's enough people that vote for something that's unique and fun and interesting, then that would actually put me in with a chance, I think. But alas, it was a panel of judges that were voting, which, as soon as I heard that, I thought, okay, that's definitely not going to be me winning then. That's going to be the ultimate, technical monster of an army that I showed you earlier, with all the floating islands. That's definitely going to win when you have a panel of judges who are just picking one army, and it's not kind of vote-based, because they're not going to have their votes split by going for multiple technically brilliant armies and then someone else sneaking up from behind with something a bit wacky and different. So definitely had no chance of winning that award. The Living Legend award, as soon as I saw, it was before I'd finished painting mine, I saw the one that had won, and I knew that was going to win the best nick, but like I said earlier, there was the possibility that that one could have just won the best overall Living Legend, which would have made it ineligible to be the best nick. So I think, if the overall package, I feel that mine was the second best nick, not necessarily in terms of painting quality, but in terms of the whole package of comedy and representing what the character was supposed to be in an amusing way, then I think that would have put me in second place there. I don't know whether the judges would have felt that way, but who knows. In terms of what other prizes were there? There were the prizes for the people that travelled the furthest, so obviously I was not in contention for those because it's very, very close to me, this event. It was at Element Games. There was the Sportsmanship Award, which I think there was about 5 people tied to win that. And I wasn't one of them. There was obviously the overall placing, which after day 1, had I gone into day 2 and just completely annihilated both my opponents, then I think I would have been in with a chance possibly of getting into the top 3. With only a single loss, it would have definitely been possible, but alas, after that loss in game 4, it wasn't really a possibility. So I was kind of fighting to stay in the top half. In that game 5, whichever League of Rordia army came out on top was going to have a very respectable finish, and the other was going to drop into the bottom half, definitely, because we were about halfway up at that stage. So, anything else I want to say before I wrap this one up? If anyone has any comments, drop them in quick, because this is going to be ended very, very shortly, because there's nothing left to talk about, and I'm hungry now. This has been a very long video, very, very deep, in-depth probing analysis, as I promised at the start. Anyone who's stuck with this all the way through, I'm sure you've learned a great deal about tactical mastery of the game of Kings of War, and you're going to be able to take these lessons with you onto the table and just annihilate all before you with this new insight that I've just planted inside your brains, and it's going to start sprouting into tactics and strategies and list building, and you're going to become unstoppable monsters, particularly when you're against me, since I've just told you half my tactics over the last couple of hours. Okay, no one's commenting, so I'm going to assume everyone's disappeared by now, and I'm going to end this video. If anyone else has any questions, if you're not watching this live, feel free to drop them in the comments and I will do my best to respond to them, unless you say something like, "Nice vid, dude," in which case I probably won't feel the need to comment. Steve gives a thumbs up. That's very nice of him. And I believe that Steve is going to be at... Aren't you going to be at Franticon, probably? So I may well see you there. I think you're going to be there. Franticon is a 2-day event that's coming up soon, which is Kings of War, Dead Zone, and Dreadball. So I'm going to be playing all those games there. Anyone who's going, let me know in the comments. And before that, I've got another tournament at Element Games as well, which is, I think it's called The Coming Storm, something like that, put on by the Northern Kings anyway. So that's going to be a fun one. I think that's the week before Franticon, so that's just Kings of War. So I'm not sure if I'm going to take the Undead Halflings to Franticon, because it's a long journey, and I'm not sure that I would trust that length of a journey when it comes to my army actually surviving it. Potentially they could get damaged on the way, because they're all metal, you see. So I'll have to think about that. If I can find a way to secure them magnetically, perhaps to the box, then they're more likely to come with me, but I'm still looking into that. Steve says yes, he's playing Dead Zone at Franticon. Well, perhaps we'll face each other in that. I think we've faced each other at the WAFCON Dead Zone tournament, didn't we? South Dakota Bob in the chat as well. Not seen your name for a while. King John as well, thanks for watching, and let's wrap this one up then. Drop the comments in the permanent section if you're not watching this live, and of course look at all the links in the description, the Facebook page, and don't forget to send me all your money and all that good stuff. So all that remains to be said at this point is good night out there, whatever you are.